Hello and welcome to Hot and Heavy, the Elaine podcast. I'm your host, Shivani Desai. Today I'll be talking about Season 6, Episode 13, The Scofflaw. Hello everyone. I hope everyone's doing well out there. I'm doing okay. I am nursing a tweaked out back again. Ugh. What the hell, guys? I don't understand how I even do it, but all of a sudden, I can't move. And my back is it's just hurts so much. And it's like the pain goes down my leg. I can't lift up my one leg. It's just not fun. But my husband went out and got some back pills for me. Bayer, to be exact. This is not an ad or a promotion. Bayer is not paying me, unfortunately, for this. But Bayer back, I don't know what it's called. But anyway, it's focused on back pain. And so I've been taking that since last night. Definitely seems to be helping, although I can still feel a little bit of the soreness. Anyway, this is not Shivani Let's Complain About My Body Issues podcast, but I don't know. That's just what's going on in my life. So I thought I'd share. Other than that, my son is at his first of, I believe, 3 basketball camps this week. And it's just all basketball all the time. I don't know if any of you out there have children who just kind of only think about and talk about one thing. And and listen, we are in Denver. The Nuggets right now are in the NBA Finals, so we are totally into it as well. But it's very cute. I'm not complaining about it. I've already complained in this banter segment, but it's so funny. It's out of nowhere. My son will be like, "Hey, did you know that in 2011, blah, blah, blah player made blah, blah, blah points after he fouled blah, blah, blah for the 4th time?" I don't know. There's just all this trivia and it's so funny. It's just the most random things. But that is something that's been consistent about my son since he was pretty much a toddler. Anything he becomes passionate about, he is all in. It is 1,000%. I mean, just all the stats, all the history, everything he can find, he's just all in. He gets obsessed. And I think he gets it from me because I was sort of the same way. Mostly for me, it was about shows and movies. And I mean, if the internet was around when I was little, I don't know. I don't think I would have left the house because, I mean, my obsession for different things that came about, I mean, if I just had an endless resource like the internet, forget about it. They'd be like, "Where's Shivani?" "Oh, she's in her room and there are weeds growing out of her body because she hasn't moved in 5 days." Ew, gross. Sorry for that visual. But yes, that's what I'm experiencing with my son. And I do love it. I think I love the passion. It's a passion for this and for basketball, and I'm not gonna complain. It's actually really fun for the whole family. Well, I don't know about his older sister isn't so much into it. She'll just be like, "No, I don't even know who you're talking about." God, they're at that age, man. It's just anything he does gets on her nerves, and he so wants her attention, but he does it in a way that is not going to help the situation. It's just going to irritate her. Typical little brother, big sister stuff, I suppose. All right, let's go ahead and get into this episode. The synopsis for The Scofflaw is as follows. An old friend lies to Jerry and George about having cancer in order to win their sympathy and gifts. Kramer discovers Newman is a parking scofflaw while George invests in a new toupee and is frustrated by a female friend's semantics. Elaine buys the same eyeglass frames as her ex-boyfriend to spite him. This episode was written by Peter Melman. All right, so first we start out in the street. George is just walking and he runs into a friend, Gary. He gives Gary a hard time. "Hey, where have you been? You haven't called me back for months." "Yeah, well," Gary says, "I've been busy." "Yeah, right. Okay." George doesn't like that excuse. "Everyone's busy. What's kept you so busy?" "Mostly chemotherapy. I'll see ya." George is just left standing there. Kramer is also on the street. He is trying to hail a cab. A car drives by and someone throws all this trash out the window, and Kramer yells out, calling them a pig. A cop nearby turns around and just looks at him. He's writing a ticket for a car that he's standing next to, and while he's looking at Kramer, he got distracted by the pig comment. The car drives away. The cop chases after the car, and Kramer just runs away. All right, next we're at Jerry's apartment. Kramer is explaining to Jerry what happened with the cop. Look, I was yelling at the litter bug. I'm not yelling at the cop, but he didn't explain. He just fled the scene. George enters. He's kind of serious. He asks Kramer to leave because he has to speak to Jerry privately. Oh? About what? Kramer puts George in a headlock and just gives him a hard time about needing to speak to Jerry privately, but then he eventually exits. And then George very somberly tells Jerry that Gary had cancer. Oh, yeah, I knew, Jerry says. He told me a few months ago. Well, George is very offended that Jerry was told and not him. And Jerry reassures him, hey, he's fine now. He was in bad shape for a while. Was he on his deathbed? No, he was on his regular bed. Well, George is also offended that Jerry didn't tell him, even though he was sworn to secrecy by Gary. What? It's not like you're my wife, Jerry says. Besides, you're better off not knowing. It's not easy dealing with someone in a situation like that, Jerry says. Well, George can't get over it. He's going to talk to him about it. Yeah, that's right. Who is he not to share his life-threatening illness? That's right. Elaine enters. She pauses and asks, were you just talking about me? No, a friend of ours, Gary. Oh, the guy with cancer? George freaks out. You told her she's not your wife. Jerry finally lets George just know. Look, you're crappy at keeping secrets. George is like, wait, you don't trust my poker face? Do you ever win at poker? George says, no. Kramer enters and tells Elaine, hey, he just saw her ex-boyfriend on TV. She scoffs. Ugh, Jake Jarmel. Yeah. Kramer says he really likes the glasses he was wearing, and he would like to get some. Elaine's like, well, you don't wear glasses. Well, yeah, but Kramer needs a new look. He's stagnating. George says, as a glasses wearer, I take offense to that. It's like me just getting a wheelchair to cruise around in. Yeah, Kramer's thought of that too. Kramer asks Elaine, how can I get in touch with Jake? She says, well, he's doing a 2-day book signing at Walden's. We had a really bad breakup. Jerry reminds her. The Juji fruits? Yeah, the Juji fruits. All right, my take on this scene, I'm just going to focus on the Elaine portion. I like that Kramer's the one to bring Jake Jarmel to her attention again. And such a funny reason as well. And such a Kramer thing. Like, I love this whole Kramer wants to change his look. He likes the eyeglasses. So I think it all really works very naturally, very organically. And I just love how clever the writing is in this scene, especially. Like, George is offended that Kramer would wear glasses just for the look, and yet George is willing to fake that he has hair by the end of the episode. They all could have said to him, as people with hair, we find that offensive. Although I think they do let him know eventually, all of them, how much they hate the toupee, except for Kramer. It's quick, but we get choked up Elaine at the end. It's so great, so funny. I've talked about it on the podcast before. On the verge of tears, Elaine is so, so funny. And man, yeah, this Jake Jarmel thing is still very raw, apparently, with her. All right, next we're at Walden Books. Jake Jarmel is signing Kramer's book. It's his copy of What's with the Pepper. Kramer asks him, hey, where'd you get your glasses? Jake says, I can't tell you that. So you don't know where you got them? Jake says, no, I know where I got them, but I just don't want to tell you because I don't want anyone else to have them. Kramer very justifiably says, well, that's peculiar. All right, next we're at Monk's. George and Gary are at a table, and George sees the beautiful woman in the back booth who never talks to anyone. Apparently, she comes in there every day, just reads, and doesn't talk to anyone. Gary tells George, oh, I spoke to Debbie Biblow, and she says hi. George is sort of pleasantly surprised by that. Oh, really? But then he says to Gary, I'm still pretty hurt that you didn't confide in me about your cancer. And Gary's like, look, you can't keep a secret. You get 2 pair and the whole table knows. Well, George doesn't think that's reason enough, and Gary apologizes. I guess I was only thinking about myself. Yes. All right, next we're on the street. Kramer is talking to the cop from before, saying, look, I was calling the litter bug a pig, not him. He really likes policemen. He wanted to become a policeman. Yeah, why didn't you? I was scared of being shot. Such I love that little part of the scene. It's just so simple, but very understandable. The cop goes on to explain how Kramer distracting him that day prevented him from finally catching a parking ticket scofflaw, his white whale. The cop just goes on this dramatic monologue about his quest to catch this person, but all Kramer gets from it is, he really likes his eye patch. All right, next we're in Monk's. George is getting up to leave his lunch with Gary. He needs to move his car. Can't park in this city. Gary tells him his company owns the parking lot around the corner, and he tells George, there's a space opening up. If he wants it, he can have it. He only has to pay the tax, which is like $50 a month. Wow, that's an amazing deal. George thanks him, and Gary also pays for lunch. That's not enough for George. He points out, you still owe me a secret. Gary then tells him there is something he hasn't told anyone, but you can't tell Jerry, he says. Come on, George says. It's not like he's my wife. Then Gary tells him that, I've been living a lie. Just one, I'm living like 20. Such a perfect George answer. Then he asks, what's yours? Well, turns out Gary never actually had cancer. And he says, see ya. Next, we're in Jerry's apartment. Elaine and Kramer are talking about Jake Jarmel. So he refused to tell you where he got the glasses. Flat out refused. Isn't that just like him? He's got to be the only one who has them. Tell me about it, soul sister. Anyway, Kramer tells her that, I told Jake you said hi. She slams the door as he's trying to leave. So upset. You told Jake I said hi? I can't believe you did that. I didn't say hi. When did I say hi? And Jerry says, I never heard her say hi. Kramer's like, look, it's just common courtesy. No, she tells Kramer, he made the last contact, so she had the upper hand in the post-breakup relationship. Now, if he thinks I said hi, I lose that upper hand. Elaine starts gathering her stuff. Where are you going? Nowhere. You're going to see Jake, aren't you? So what if I am, she says. Kramer follows her out and asks her, hey, if you see him, ask him where he got the glasses. George enters. And Jerry asks how it went with Gary. George is acting so weird. Jerry says, looks like something's on your mind. No, George keeps denying it. So that's your poker face. And Jerry just keeps on poking and prying. Finally, George loses it and blurts out, Gary Fogel never had cancer. My take on this scene, it's rare to see Elaine and Kramer having like this moment together. I just so love how this Jake Jarmel thing is between the two of them, dishing about how annoying he can be. It's such a fun moment. The anger she has about him telling Jake hi from her, it really reminded me of a future episode where she gets mad at Jerry for the hot and heavy comment to John Germain's bandmate. I think that's it's like parallel situations here. And what else is parallel? John Germain, Jake Jarmel, JJ. What is with that, Elaine? I just wanted to mention Peter Melman is really good at writing these sort of relationship situations, like the intricacies of relationship etiquette, of breakup etiquette, all of that kind of stuff. I really like how he writes that. Like this whole upper hand concept Elaine talks about and how important it is to her. I mean, it makes sense to me. I mean, he made the last contact, yeah, and she didn't respond. So she has the upper hand. The ball's in her court. And so she's in control of that sort of post-breakup relationship. I totally get this. I think it makes total sense. I think a lot of us have gone through it where it's like we've broken up with someone. There's residual feelings. Maybe it wasn't mutual. Maybe it was kind of contentious. And yeah, the post-breakup relationship is another part of the relationship for sure. And plus, with Elaine, she definitely feels like she screwed up that relationship with her dumbass Juji Fruits move. And so to her, the upper hand is like really important. It's all she has, I guess, left from that relationship that she ruined because of Candy. All right, next we're in Walden Books. Elaine is holding up the line, trying to explain to Jake Jarmel that she never told Kramer to tell him she said hi. It was an unauthorized hi, in fact. So Jake clarifies everything. Okay, you didn't say hi. Correct. All right. So you still have feelings for me, don't you? Correct. What's that? The guy behind Elaine has had enough. He's been trying to get his book signed all day. So as Elaine defends herself, she signs the book for him. And she's telling Jake, it's ridiculous for him to think that, considering she didn't even say hi to him. But then Jake points out, like, making the trip to the bookstore to tell him that she didn't say hi is more of a gesture than if she did say hi. And Elaine is just sort of flustered by that logic. My take on this scene, oh my gosh, it's a great scene. I love how clueless Elaine is about how unreasonable she looks. Like she's just on this mission to clarify to Jake, but yeah, just doesn't see it from the outside at all. And it's very entertaining how this is written, the sort of back and forth with Elaine responding, correct. What? It's just really well done, really fun, so entertaining to watch. I love the moment where she signs that man's book. Super funny. So there's so many things going on at the same time, but we also get this visually we're not bored at all, even though she's just standing and talking to Jake. Like just that little thing of signing the man's book, like it kind of breaks up the conversation, but there's some physical stuff going on. I just wanted to point that out again for the nerds out there. It's not such a static scene of someone standing and someone sitting, talking, you need those little things to make scenes more interesting. And flustered Elaine at the end. So well done by JLD. I love that. Jake, she has nothing to say. And really, she doesn't have anything to say. You can't defend what she did. All right, next we're in Jerry's apartment. George is explaining how the doctors thought that Gary had cancer, but the surgery revealed it wasn't actually cancer, and that there's been nothing wrong with him. He's been lying for 2 months. And Jerry tells George he felt so bad for him because he was all worried about losing more hair during chemotherapy that he got him an unlimited membership to the hair team for men. Whoa, George is like, you did that? And Jerry heads to the phone. I can't wait to let Gary have it. George stops him. No, you can't tell him. George was sworn to secrecy. And also there's the parking spot to think about. So Jerry clarifies, because you can get free parking, he needs to pretend that this guy had cancer when he didn't? Yeah. Well, I don't like it. And he's supposed to see him tomorrow. And George says, you have to maintain the same disposition. You can't let on that you know anything. And that you have to be nice. Jerry's like, why didn't he tell me? Because you were being so nice. I don't know if I can be that nice. You'll be nice. So next we're at Monk's. Jerry has his lunch with Gary. Jerry enters and sees Gary with a toupee on. You can just tell Gary loves himself in this toupee. He's really feeling himself. Jerry asks, was that from my gift certificate? Oh, yeah. Gary thanks him again. You've been so nice. Yeah, well, I'm glad you could take advantage. And then Gary points out the woman in the back booth reading, tells Jerry to check this out, Jack, and stands up to head over there. And Kramer walks in wearing an eye patch. Jerry tells him he looks like a pirate. Well, he wants to look like a pirate. He introduces himself to Gary, but misses his hand because he can't see. Gary heads off to the back booth. Kramer tries to sit and misses the seat. There's only one problem with the patch. Can't see out of your right side? No, it's itchy. All right, next we're in George's car. Debbie Biblow is with him, and she really likes his car. And of course, he can't help but say, once belonged to John Voight. And she asks George, what made you call me out of the blue like that? Oh, well, Gary told me you said hi. I didn't say hi. You didn't? No, I told him to send you my regards, but I didn't say hi. And George is kind of confused by that. The actress who plays Debbie is Barbara Allen Woods, and she's best known for her work on One Tree Hill and Honey, I Shrunk the Kids, the TV show. I like her. It's a small part. It's not so kind of basically written. Actually, she does get some fun interaction with George. And I think that Barbara Allen Woods does a great job with it. She's very grounded, but yet very funny. All right, next we are in a cab and on the street. A couple scenes I'm going to pair together here. Elaine is chatting it up with the cabbie about her interaction with Jake Jarmel. She admits it was stupid to go all the way down there to the bookstore to confront him, but he didn't have to act so smug about it. The cab driver agrees. Smugness is not a good quality. Then Elaine sees a man on the street who has glasses just like Jake's. She tells the guy to pull over. She hands over some money and says she thinks she found a way to get back at her ex-boyfriend. He loves it. Revenge is very good, he says. Then we see Elaine chasing this man down on the street. She asks where he got his frames. Well, turns out they're from Malaysia. Then she strikes up a deal with him to buy the glasses right off his face, even though he can barely see without him. Elaine doesn't care about that. Come on. He mentions that, these were very expensive. Let's start the bidding. My take on this scene, a couple of really fun scenes for JLD. I love how she's so fired up. She's even discussing the situation with the cab driver and that he's so into it, I love that they're having this little back and forth. Also, I like that she admits that she was dumb to go to the bookstore. It was a dumb move on her part. There's a self-awareness that finally comes up for her. With the dude on the street, insistent Elaine here. I mean, she is not going to back down. I sort of love that. And the physicality part too. I love the way she runs down the street and she sort of like stops with that little giggle. And you know what? We see some smugness with her at the end when she says, "Let's start the bidding." All right, next we're back in George's car. So George asks Debbie, "So this isn't a date?" "No. Why? You thought it was a date?" "I thought it was a date." And she's like, No, it's not a date." And he says, "Well, what about the regards?" "Regards don't mean anything. I mean, it's not like I said hi." In fact, she starts, never mind. And George is like, no, keep going. Tell me. "Can you keep a secret?" "Oh, yeah," he says. And she admits that she's developed feelings for Gary after his cancer diagnosis. All this perspective he gained. "I fell in love with him." "Oh, yeah." George is like, yeah, he's got some perspective. Next, we're at Monk's. Jerry is reading the paper and Kramer tries to explain what the whip does in the Senate and the House. Honestly, Kramer does have a pretty accurate answer, except for some of the literal nature of the actual whip being used. Anyway, Gary comes over with so much swagger. Apparently, the booth woman was charmed by him. She's talking a blue streak now, Jack. All right, next I'm going to cover a bunch of these little scenes. We're on the street. The cop sees the white whale car. He's so happy, takes out his ticket pad. Back in George's car, he's super annoyed. He can't find parking. Why do they even sell cars in Manhattan? And Debbie says, "Don't complain. At least you have your health." The glasses man, now glasses less thanks to Elaine, he steps out onto the street because he's blind and George almost hits him. The tire screech of George's car distracts the cop and the car drives away. Once again, his white whale has slipped out of his fingers. Kramer comes out of Monk's after hearing the commotion and sees that the white whale is Newman. All right, next in Jerry's apartment, George and Jerry are basically having a bitch fest about Gary. Jerry says how he picked up that woman in Monk's. Oh, George can't believe it. The one who doesn't talk to anybody? How did he do that? He was brimming with confidence from the toupee. And then George says, oh, yeah, and Debbie says she fell in love with him because of all this perspective he got. A guy who lies about a life-threatening illness just to get some hair has perspective? George heads over to the door. It's kind of a sad moment. So he picked her up, huh? Walked right over to her table. Wow, George says as he rubs his head and, there's some more hair falling out. Next, we are back at Walden Books. Elaine runs up to Jake, showing him the glasses she got. "You're not the only one. I have them too." "Where did you get those?" "Malaysia. I was in the area." And Jake Jarmel slams his fist down in anger. My take on this scene, it's great. I love Elaine's excitement, how she rubs Jake's face in it, and she's just so satisfied with her little maneuver with the glasses. It's kind of childish, but I love it. This has nothing to do with anything except that I just wanted to point it out. Jake Jarmel has quite the pronounced, I think it's like the proper way to say it is a cleft chin, but I've always said it as a butt chin. And to quote Chandler from Friends, it can also be called a face ass. It's just really pronounced. Like, I don't know if I've ever seen one that's so deep, the butt part. Whew. Anyway, look for it next time you watch the episode. All right, next we're in Newman's car. Kramer gets in and tells him to drive, and he tells him, "I know your secret, that he's a scofflaw." Newman admits he can't sleep at night. He couldn't tell anyone. "Help me, Kramer, help me." All right, next we are on the street. George is telling Jerry he's just going to try some toupees on to see how they look. It's just hair. Jerry is totally against this, explains how fake they always look. George points out, look, there's some that look so good, that you don't even know that they're toupees. "Well, what about if you get involved with a woman? You're going to tell her?" And he says again, "Look, the way they make them, I won't have to." "Oh, so you're going to keep it a secret your whole life, and then at your funeral, the mortician gives this to Mrs. Costanza. We thought you'd want this." Next, we are at Monk's. Elaine is having coffee with Mr. Lippman, and he's explaining his goal of owning his own publishing house. And he's actually handling this Jake Jarmel book. So if he gets the success he thinks he's going to get with that book, he might have a place for Elaine. Oh, Mr. Lippman. Elaine is so pleased with this. It would be great not to have to look all over the city for Mr. Pitt's socks anymore. Then Lippman compliments her on her glasses. You're very unusual. And she hands them over, She has no more use for them. There's a place on the corner that'll change the prescription. Yeah, take them. And he puts them on. Oh, fabulous. My take on this scene. Yay, Richard Fancy. I love myself some Dick Fancy. He's so good. This is just a short scene. I mean, definitely jammed in there to give us stakes for Elaine and Jake Jarmel, that whole plot. Lippman sort of comes out of nowhere, but I don't mind it because I love Dick Fancy and he's always great. I also like throughout the season, Elaine working for Mr. Pitt, but I also like seeing these near escapes Elaine has to get out of her job with Mr. Pitt. They always kind of blow up in her face. First, the double day opportunity with Miss Landis and that racket stuff. And then what happens here with the glasses, she sort of does it to herself. But it's like these like near escapes for poor Elaine to get out of her job with Mr. Pitt. I love this scene so much, too, because JLD and Richard Fancy have such a great chemistry. I mean, this smile, his like goofy smile after putting on those glasses is so cute, too. Oh, good. All right, next we're in a courtroom. The judge sentences Newman to keep his car in a garage. Newman immediately breaks down. I can't afford that. Afford it you will, Mr. Newman, or your car will be impounded and sold at auction. Kramer reassures the judge. Excuse me. Eye patch Kramer reassures the judge. Don't worry, Your Honor. He's in my custody. And she just looks at him like, who the hell are you? The actress here is Lillian Lehman, who plays the judge. And man, she has like almost 100 credits on IMDb. She has appeared in so many shows and films, including General Hospital, LA Law, The Closer. I love her performance. This no-nonsense judge, she does it so well. And that look she gives Kramer at the end of the scene is priceless. All right, next we are at the hair team for men. George has been outfitted with a toupee and asks Jerry, what do you think? Jerry is just, again, so against this. I don't want to say. No, I want you to say. It's not good, okay? You look stupid. The stylist guy there explains, it hasn't been custom fitted to his scalp. George really thinks it looks pretty good. Jerry pretty much calls him a senior citizen. Why don't you move down to Miami Beach already? George asks the guy to show him something else. And once again, the stylist says, look, it'll be different once we design something specifically for you. And he points out that Jerry isn't being very helpful. And Jerry thinks he's the only one being helpful. And they get into this little argument and fight. And George has to break it up. I love that guy. Just a side note. Oh my God. I just love his performance and how mad he gets. Oh, you people with hair think you're so superior. Oh, it's so good. Gary comes bopping into the room and sees George with the toupee and says, good for you, Jack. He tells the dude, hey, I'm going to need a little bit of an adjustment. And the guy exits. Gary then tells George, I can't give you that parking spot. The judge needs it for some scofflaw. Well, now it's wide open for Jerry to tell him that he knows about the cancer lie. I was talking to George the other day. You didn't. I did. And Jerry tries to take the toupee off his head. Next, we are at Monk's. Toupeed George enters with a lot of confidence. He's feeling himself 1,000%. Goes over to a beautiful woman. How's your life? All right? Yeah, not bad at all. And she pushes the chair out for George with her foot. The actress here is Elizabeth Soley. She doesn't have too many credits, but she's also appeared on Friends and Silk Stockings. Silk Stockings, man. When I saw that on her IMDb page, I was like, I totally forgot about that show. I never watched it, but I just it was always around, right? You'd hear about, and the next Silk Stockings. Maybe that's my next podcast. I don't know. Anyway, this woman is very beautiful, and I like her performance. It's short and sweet, but I think she does a really good job just looking absolutely incredibly beautiful. And that little push out with her foot, very sexy. All right, then we have a tag to the episode. It's the press conference for Jake Jarmel's book, and Mr. Lippman is there. He introduces Jake Jarmel to the press. The first question is, what's your cut on this book, Jake? And Mr. Lippman comes back to the podium and says, this is interesting. I have some data for you on that. And he puts on the glasses to read. And Jake freaks out. Where'd you get those? He sees Elaine in the audience and starts yelling at her. What is this, some kind of joke? Then he attacks Lippman to get the glasses back. Elaine leaves the press conference excusing herself along the row, saying, I gotta go look for some socks. My take on this scene, I think this is the first take I've had to do on a tag, but it's really, really funny. We see what a baby Jake Jarmel is, and I just love how taken aback Mr. Lippman is. He's sort of like, what? I feel like Elaine made a lot of bad decisions in this episode, but of course, it's all entertaining. I mean, first, going to see Jake at Walden's in the first place. But I feel like she should have saw this coming. Why are you giving Lippman, who's managing the Jake Jarmel book, these glasses? You know they're going to interact. You know that anyone who needs reading glasses is going to put them on a lot, and have to read. So if she really wanted this job with Lippman, she should have been looking out for herself and not done that. But anyway, it was still made for a funny ending. And I love that line at the end with the, gotta go look for socks. It's really a perfect ending. All right, I'm going to take a quick break, and I will see you on the other side. Kevin Gorman had just solved his 37th case, the biggest marjoram heist in New England history. After weeks of interviews and media attention, he was getting burnt out. And after Fiona tells him she wants to see other people, he knew it was time for a vacation. In the new novel from acclaimed writer Jake Jarmel, who brought us such gems as What's with the Pepper and Juji Fruit of Betrayal, comes his most unexpected novel yet. Departing from his usual food-based mysteries, Jarmel instead takes us on an adventure to Malaysia, where Keith Gorman discovers a new passion in What's with the Frames. It's Eat, Pray, Love meets Stand By Me meets Nightmare on Elm Street meets Steel Magnolias meets Lens Crafters, says the New York Times Book Review. Who knew eyeglass frames could make me question my purpose, says the Boston Chronicle. Jarmel weaves together the love for eyewear with self-discovery beautifully. We are rooting for Kevin Gorman to find the deepest meaning of his existence, all the while hoping he scores some bitchin' frames, says The Guardian. Pre-order What's with the Frames now at www.buttchinauthor.books. For a limited time, you will receive a discount code for eyeglass frames with your order. The frames must be purchased from the Malaysian artisan mentioned in the book and may not be used for the specific frames Keith Gorman ultimately chooses in Chapter 19. The code is only valid on purchases of $12,000 or higher. What's with the frames? Malaysia has a secret, and it's really cool frames. And we're back. All right, now it's time for Greg's Sack Lunch. Greg is our most dedicated contributor to this podcast, and his segment, Greg's Sack Lunch, delights us with his thoughts about the episode. So let's get into it. The first thing I find in Greg's sack are his favorite scene and Elaine moments. He says, I really like this episode because there are several different stories and they are all pretty funny, which is rare because Kramer is usually the one I could live without. But I even like the Scofflaw story. Elaine's story about Jake Jarmel and his glasses is one of the less meaty plots, mostly because there is so much to both John Lovitz and Newman in this episode, but it's played out superbly. I love how she gets tied in with Kramer, going to see Jake first, and now she has to regain the upper hand in the post-breakup relationship because of his flub. I feel like the getting back at an ex story could have gone to George, given how petty he is, but I like that Elaine is given this to play with. My favorite scene and Elaine moment is when she randomly finds a man on the street who she recognizes has the Jake Jarmel glasses while driving in a back of a cab, and then wears them cockily in front of Jake. While this coincidence is somewhat ridiculous, I wonder why they didn't pick more distinctive glasses. They could have been a funky color or something, but they were pretty nondescript. We see this I got the best of you, Elaine, later when she finds the Soup Nazis recipes. She plays that so well because there's a sick joy in her eyes. Oh yes, I love that too. Yeah, vengeful Elaine is a delight. I mean, really, what Elaine isn't a delight? But I love that we get to see this in this episode. And I agree with you, Greg. The fact that she recognizes the glasses driving in the back of a cab. I mean, and also, no offense to JLD, even though this is kind of a criticism of her performance, like the way her eyes move too, like it's not very, like it's just not great, I guess, spotting glasses acting. But whatever, we're just supposed to believe it, and I believe it because it's delightful, and I love how she runs down the street after him. All right, next in Greg's sack, he says, as for the non-Elaine scenes, I do love when George and Jerry confront Gary at the toupee store. Every word of that scene is perfect. The argument between Jerry and the toupee store man cracks me up, and I love how quick George turns on Gary once the parking spot is off the table. I also love George's confidence at the end of the episode. The choice of the line, how's your life, at a woman who visually is so out of his league and it working has always made me laugh. Yeah, it is fantastic. Okay, back to the scene in the hair team for men. Yes. I mentioned it a little bit, but I love, his name is Basil, I believe, or Basil, the guy who plays the toupee store salesman or stylist, whatever you want to call it. And oh my gosh, like, no, I don't think you're being very helpful. Like how mad he gets and even how mad Jerry gets. And then I there's something about how Jerry's like, I'm sorry. Afterwards, he's like, he can't even believe how fired up he got. And I just think it's also, and I might be reaching here and I'm fine with that, but this is how much he cares about George. He doesn't want him to be laughed at behind his back. No offense to you personally. Oh, it is. I agree with you, Greg. It is a perfect scene. And yeah, how's your life? Okay. Well, apparently that line Larry David loved. I guess he maybe had seen it or read an interview with Keith Richards of the Rolling Stones. And yeah, that's how he, I guess, addressed someone or kind of opened it. How's your life? Okay. Like he loved it. So he decided to incorporate it into this episode. I mean, we all do that. In fact, I don't know how many of you have noticed in this podcast how I say at the end of every episode, I think pretty much from the beginning, I say, thank you so much for listening and I'll see you next time. The I'll see you next time is a direct robbery from Dave Gahan, the lead singer of Depeche Mode. He says that at the end of every concert. So every live show I've seen of Depeche Mode, he ends the show with, we'll see you next time. So yeah, just a little trivia for you hot and heavy listeners out there. And if you knew that, kudos to you. Please write me because that's amazing. All right, next in Greg's sack is his scene swap idea. And also, my foot is asleep, so excuse me, I need to change positions here. Just give me a second. Oh, God. Ow, ow, ow. Oh, my God. Oh, don't you hate when your limbs fall asleep? Okay. Whew, better. All right. Yes, the scene swap idea. Greg says, I wouldn't change much, but I don't find Lovitz that funny in the episode, or that much in general. So I'd maybe swap out some of his scenes for more of Elaine plotting against Jake, or something where Mr. Pitt sends her on a new errand which leads her to meeting with Mr. Lippman. They used socks again as her task, but it would have been funnier to have her looking for something else mundane. But I'm just nitpicking here. Oh my gosh, I thought the same thing. I do love the line at the end because I do think it's a good callback, like the whole thing where she's like, I have to go look for some socks. So I think maybe that's why, because Mr. Pitt's not in the episode, they just had to make reference to him. And I think her shopping for socks is probably, that's the first thing she does for him. So I think that's why they called back to it. But it's interesting you say that about Jon Lovitz. I'm so neutral on him. I've enjoyed him in things and not enjoyed him in things. He actually came to the local, theater here in my town, which is, it's actually it's a nice sized theater, but it's it's in a suburb of Denver. So it's not exactly, Red Rocks. And I remember thinking, and he came with, gosh, who was it? I think it was with Tim Meadows and Chris Kattan. So I think it was the three of those SNL alums and doing a show together. But it was funny because I was like, I don't know, I feel like I should maybe see it given that I'm a huge, SNL fan. But I was also like, I don't know if I want to spend the money to see Jon Lovitz live. So I ended up not going, spoiler alert, but, and I'm totally fine with that decision. It's also interesting that you mentioned Jon Lovitz, and is he funny or not? Because he guested on Seinfeld, and in Jerry's show, Comedians in Cars Getting Coffee, the Dana Carvey episode, when he's chatting with Dana talks about how at the time he was touring with Jon Lovitz and they have like a show together. And Jerry's like, "Oh, does Lovitz have an act? Because I've never seen one." Oh my gosh. And that makes Dana Carvey laugh so hard and was like, "Yeah, I mean, it's super like non-PC and it's totally John. It's great." But like, yeah, you could just see, and Jerry Seinfeld doesn't hold back with that stuff, but you could just see him being like, "Oh, really? Like you're doing a show with him? How could he even hold a candle to you? To Dana Carvey? Really?" Like it was really funny. Yeah, I'm so neutral. I did mention it because I'm like, I'm trying to just stay focused on the Elaine stuff in the episodes, but I actually think he's really funny in this episode. I sometimes quote the "good for you, Jack." Like that always makes me laugh. Oh, and I will say, I think my favorite Lovitz performance is in A League of Their Own. He's really funny in that. And it's only in the beginning. It's not much of a role, but, he's the one that scouts all the girls and picks them up and stuff for the team. He's pretty funny in that. So anyway, that's all the Lovitz stuff I have for you guys. So moving on to the next thing in Greg's sack, which are his extra thoughts. Greg says, "I love how Elaine always spills her guts to cab drivers. For someone who didn't want to talk to the driver in an earlier episode, she often explains her motives to a random one-off character. The cabbie in this episode cracks me up. Smugness is not a good quality. I often applaud the bigger name guest stars like Bryan Cranston, but I have to say the casting agent for this show was often great at picking out even the smallest of characters." Oh, yeah. I think the cabbie in this scene, I want to say, and I'm going to real-time look it up, guys. Let's get to the IMDb. Oh, wait, no, actually, I'm just going to search up. Can you hear the typing? You guys, this is real-time. The Scofflaw Seinfeld. It's already in my, history. I want to say Bob Shaw he's a cabbie. Bob Shaw plays the cabbie. And, he's a writer. Yeah, he was a writer on the show. So yeah, that happens every now and then too, right? They pulled in writers or crew people to be certain roles. I'm just looking at his credits. There's not much. He did write for Hercules, the TV series. Okay. Anyway, thank you, Greg, for all of your thoughts. We always love Greg's sack lunch thoughts. And now it's time to close Greg's sack a lunch. All right, now for my favorite Elaine moments. It's got to be the scene where Elaine shows Jake those glasses she got. I just love her energy in the scene. "I had them too." So childish. A close second is the choked up moment. "Yeah, the Chuchi fruits." And in my final notes, this is a very entertaining episode all around. Elaine's plot is very fun. It's like the perfect combination of silly, but yet understandable. Like I said, I understand how pissed she is about Kramer's gaffe. She needs to make it right. She has to make it right. She cannot let it go. For a scene swap, I, once again, am not a fan of the Kramer-Newman crap. The Scofflaw stuff, so boring. So I would totally swap that out for more Elaine and Jake interaction, maybe more Lippman in there, more Gary with Jerry and George, like anything. The Scofflaw stuff is not into it. But overall, very fun episode and vengeful Elaine. It's up there as far as my favorite Elaines go. So we get to see that in this episode big time in the form of glasses from Malaysia. And I think that's all I can say about the Scofflaw. Please make sure you follow Hot and Heavy on social media. On Instagram, it's at Hot Heavy Elaine. On TikTok, it's at Elaine Bennis Podcast. And if you'd like to email me, please do at elainepodcast@gmail.com. Thank you so much for listening, and